Hi there, welcome to Floating Dreams. Today's video is going to be a would I repurchase these eyeshadow palettes if these came out today or if I lost my entire makeup collection. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. I have been doing this new series for a few months now where I do a hypothetical of these are 10 palettes I have. If these were to come out today as new palettes, would I still be interested in them? But also, if I were to lose all of my makeup, would this be something I would be like, oh, I'm sad this is gone? Or like, was it worth it in the end? That's sort of the question we're asking ourselves today. So I've selected 10 eyeshadow palettes from my makeup collection to chat with you about. So let me just get to it. Before we get into the video though, it may be good to know who I am and what I like doing on this channel. My name is Maaike, I live in the Netherlands, I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup, what makeup I like to wear, and then therefore also what palettes I might be interested in purchasing again if it so happened to be that I lost my entire makeup collection. I have been reviewing makeup for more than a decade, so I have tried a lot of eyeshadow. A lot, but it's one of my favorite categories to talk about. I love a good Essence and Catrice product from time to time, and I love getting the use out of my makeup, so let's get chatting. So yes, 10 palettes where we ask ourselves, are these worth it? Would I repurchase these again? Like, how do I feel about them now? The whole 9 yards. I have a list with all of the palettes that are sort of currently in my collection-ish. It was up to date when I filmed my eyeshadow palette collection in the summertime, but I have acquired some other palettes in the past couple of months that are not on the list yet. However, I just need to make sure I update that list at some point in the next couple of months. But yeah, if you want to know exactly what palettes are still in my collection and what palettes I've decluttered, you can click the link in the description box down below. And if there's a particular item that you would like me to mention in this video, then definitely do that. I have put an X behind the name of a palette I've already mentioned in this video, and the declutter list is for my decluttering series. Like whether I actually regret getting rid of certain things. That's another series I'm doing, so you can expect me to do a video with that theme later in the month. So yes, let's get to these palettes, and I've got something teeny tiny again, which again, I don't think I've mentioned yet. Like, this is the thing. I should be a little bit better at checking before sitting down to film this video, but as far as I know, I haven't mentioned these 10 yet. It's going to get very complicated when we get really through it, but oh well. We have Natasha Denona Mini Love. Natasha Denona Mini Love was one that I bought because the larger Love palette, I should say, wasn't quite up my street. It was a little bit too pink heavy. I don't love a pink eyeshadow. And this actually has two purples. It looks pink because of the pink background. We get a pink shimmer, we get a champagne, and this like peachy pink sort of duochrome thing. So on paper, this is an incredibly great palette for me because I love a good purple, like a plummy purple and like a lilac, like a dirty mauvey pink, you could say. So this is aces. These are all shades I love. And yet, I don't think I would purchase this again. Like, if I were to lose it, or if this was a color story coming out today, I don't think I would be interested in it. And I think the reason for that being is because we are currently having so many great cool tones, and I just think that I have other things that center more around like the pinky purpley side of this palette rather than these peachy pinky things. Those aren't my favorites, but that sort of expand on this idea. And I just like that a lot better for me. So I have some of those Kaleidos quads now, which weren't out yet when this came out, I think, because this is a couple of years old by now. And the Kaleidos one, especially that latest Alma Viva collection, I think really nicely has some of these tones in as well. I have a couple of things from like Glam Shop, and I've just come into things. Oh, also my Smoke and Mirrors palette from Gloss Gods has like these kind of like dusty purpley things in, which I just adore, but then mixed in with cool tones, which I just prefer. So I don't think this is something I would personally prioritize all that much when it comes to buying it in the future. I think at the time, I kind of bought this because I was a little bit disappointed with what the larger Love was, which just wasn't quite up my street, because this was a little bit more curated. I think this may actually have been the first mini palette from the brand that I bought. So this is okay. I love the Natasha Denona formula. There's nothing wrong there. But I have just found over time that Natasha Denona color stories, as much as I love the formula, aren't my favorite. So this one is good. I can definitely get more use out of it. I'm not going to declutter it anytime soon, for sure, but I don't think I would buy it again. And I actually feel quite similarly about this. This is the Blitz Astral Quad from Pat McGrath, and I have decluttered some Pat McGrath in the past year, mainly some of the motherships because it didn't quite work, and this was actually my first Pat McGrath product I've ever bought. I bought it, I think, in New York, or right after I came back from New York, but it was actually something that was out then, and it was one of those things, like, I couldn't really commit to, like, the higher price point of a full mothership, but this had some of the special shades in that everybody was raving about, so I was like, let me try it, and I didn't like this at all initially. When I first tried this creased and it didn't work, and I was like, is this worth, like, this was like, what, $60, $70, whatever. It was an expensive palette for how many shades you get, and you know, it's not exactly the kind of colors I wear on the day-to-day basis either. So this probably wasn't like the best choice for me personally when it comes to, you know, trying the brand for the first time. I should have waited and gone for something differently, perhaps, because I do really enjoy the Pat McGrath formula for sure. But this, I mean, it's just not really a standalone palette, is it? Is it? I don't love the gold, and Pat McGrath puts a gold in every palette she does. These three shades are really stunning. They're not like flippy or anything, but the purple is really nice, the green is nice, the blue is nice. Could you do a full look with this? Yes. However, I have found, because of the texture of some of these shades, that you do need to apply like a matte in the crease for this to really work. If you put any of these in the crease, I experienced a lot of like breaking up of the shadow, because these don't sit very well in the fold of your eye. It just doesn't really work that way. However, if I put like a bronzer in my crease and then, you know, use these only on the mobile lid and on the lower lash line, I'm fine. But for how expensive it is, I don't feel this was worth it in the end. Are these shades stunning? Yes. But that's, I think, why I actually like some of my larger motherships better, and some of the other quads I now have better, because those actually have some mattes in, and I feel these shades just need mattes to just perform their best, which if that gold had been like a matte brown, this would have worked so much better, and I've always disliked the palette for that reason. However, because it was my first Pat McGrath palette, I don't want to get rid of it, and the shades individually are really, really stunning. Like that purple as a bit of liner, the blue and the green make for a stunning halo eye kind of effect, especially if you use the purple to deepen up the blue a little bit, and then just dabbing a bit of the green in the middle. It's absolutely stunning. And like I said, they work really well everywhere else on your eye area, save for the crease. But no, I would not repurchase. If I lost this, I don't think I would, like if my entire house went up in flames and I had to rebuy my entire makeup collection, I don't think this is not going to be top of mind of some of the things that I would be missing out on. It just wouldn't be. Next up is a palette that, again, I kind of forget I have this, but every time I use it, I'm reminded of how much I love it. So I don't think I could go without my Carly Bible palette from ABH. This is a palette that was like right at that tail end of when ABH started to try and become ColourPop and giving us a new release every single week. So this palette was incredibly snowed under. And you might look at this and go like, Micah, it's super peach heavy. I thought you didn't like warm tones. but that top row is where it's at. Like these sort of like grayish blues that it has, and this like taupey number, and then it has this really nice blue purpley sort of flip. It's got a great mauve. This is a really nice shimmer too. It's got a cool tone brown, and on me, these peaches and like reddish pinky shades all pulled a little bit more cool toned. There's just something in the ways these are blended that really this, like these three, and then this is the only true warm tone that pulls very warm on my particular skin tone. But this actually worked quite well for me. So as intense and warm tone and out there as it looks, it actually looked really pretty on. So this is a very versatile palette because you get both warm tones, both cool tones. It's quite fair as well. Like it's not too deep at all. And I remember like this was like the last one I bought before we got the whole range with the Nouveau palette and stuff going on. This was like the last like ABH palette I really got my hands on. I remember getting it on sale. I think it was a Black Friday or like a Christmas sale kind of thing that I got this, thinking like, I'll just get it to complete the set, and I wasn't really motivated to use it. And then I use it, and it ended up being like one of the very few ABH palettes that's still intact in my collection. It just is. It's a stunning palette. Very overlooked. Would I repurchase it? Now that I know how much I love it, yes, but just at face value of the color story, I probably wouldn't miss it that much in my collection, but it is definitely one of the more unique ones I have. We need to discuss some of the cool tones as well, of course. Venus Immortalis from Lime Crime. This, I think, this is like the original gray tone color story. Like you see all these gray tones going around right now, and I'm like, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. As much as I say that I don't like gray eyeshadow, I think brands have done something to gray eyeshadow at the minute that really makes my heart tick. So, but this is the original. This is the gray, like, and here's why I don't like grays. I think this is the palette that ruined me when it comes to my not really being a fan of gray tones, because this has a gray that is pretty much the only thing you can use as a crease shade in this entire palette. And this undertone doesn't really work with any of the undertones in the palette, which is the one thing I dislike about it. But these two shimmers, chef's kiss. This like mauve tone is really stunning. And what I tend to do when I use this is that I use this a little bit in the crease and then blend this over it to sort of have the best of both worlds. I just wish this was darker. If this was a better crease shade, I would like this a lot better and I wouldn't dislike this gray as much. But this is very blue heavy, but nothing else in the palette is very blue heavy. So it doesn't really go. I mean, again, grays can have different undertones, you guys. So it's a bit of a weird one, I think. And then these two shades are a little bit too light. Just for the two shimmers alone, I would repurchase this. I think it's still available on the Lime Crime website. You can still get your hands on it if you'd like to. I mean, Echo is simply one of the best taupe shades to have ever seen the light of day. So knowing that, I would definitely miss it for that reason, because taupe is my favorite thing. But I just think that this palette needed a taupe instead of the gray. You know, if this had been more taupe leaning, less blue, a little bit more purple brown, it could go with the wine color we get in here, it could go with the silver, it could go with this shade, it could go with the taupe. I think it would have worked a lot better. So I think this is the palette that ruined me when it came to gray shades, but now I see a lot of more palettes with a grayish purple undertone, and those are the kind of grays that I think can look really nicely on my skin tone. So yeah, Lime Crime Venus Immortalis, I would repurchase this for one shade. I would. Something a bit more recent for me was the Perry from Glam Shop. Now, Glam Shop is a brand that discontinues their palettes super quickly. Like, once it's out of stock, they don't seem to bring things back, which hurts my soul. So I could never even physically repurchase this if I wanted to. But hypothetically, if this were still available for purchase, I don't think I would buy the Very Peri again because it's just a little bit limiting. If you want this idea, but yeah, you want a periwinkle kind of palette, then the Lavish from ColourPop I think is a little bit better. And I've likened and compared a lot of Glam Shop palettes to ColourPop. If you're in the EU and you want the vibe of certain ColourPop palettes, then definitely keep an eye on Glam Shop, because the Glam Shop palettes are about as expensive as a ColourPop palette, but it's a lot easier to get a hold of if you're in the EU. It just is. I very often prefer the Glam Shop version over the ColourPop version. But for the Very Peri, it's the other way around. When I was using the Lavish, I was like, I understand why a lot of people didn't like it, because Lavish makes you think it's going to be like a lavender palette, but it's actually more periwinkle. So if they had called it like the Very Peri, like this one is called, I think it would have made people a little bit more accepted, like a little bit more receptive to what that palette had to offer. It got a lot of negative reviews, but it's very light. This is also very light. This is also very one note, which is why I didn't love it. I think the Lavish just has a slightly better periwinkle feel to it than this does, which is why I would repurchase the ColourPop one over this if this was still available. This definitely cannot be used as a standalone palette. I did it for the video, for the review, just to see what this palette has to offer on its own, but I actually got their purple palette, which was on sale last spring, which has also been discontinued, to be able to use in conjunction with this, because by itself, it wasn't great. So no, I would not repurchase. Speaking of ColourPop, Making Mauves. And Making Mauves is, if I open the palette up, not the Making Mauves that you can purchase from the ColourPop website, because I have reorganized pretty much every single color story I own from ColourPop, because there is so much overlap, and all of their palettes are magnetic, so it's very easy to sort of go around and get rid of the shades you no longer like and build your own palettes once you have a couple of these. That's definitely what I've done with the majority of my eyeshadow palette collection from ColourPop. And the Making Mauves was really nice. I really enjoyed it, but I really enjoyed, I think the three shimmers in the middle are still original to what this palette had, but I didn't love some of the mattes it had. So I definitely made it a little bit more purple with some of these shades here. These look very warm toned in the viewfinder, but I think those work really well. And that's the way I sort of went about it when I reorganized it. I put some of my more neutral leaning mauve tones in the Flutter By packaging, and then some of the warmer tone things I ended up putting in this. So it is a mauve tone palette that leans a little bit more warm toned. And when it comes to a warm tone mauve palette, I have my She's in Parties from Melt. I don't need any other warm tone mauve palettes other than that. And this works really well. But yeah, I ended up taking, I think it was 4 palettes from ColourPop. Some Blush Crush things, the Flutter By, and the Ménage à Moi. Those 4 palettes I reduced to those 2 palettes. So with ColourPop, I don't feel they nail it with the color stories, just like Natasha Denona, but again, I do really enjoy their formula. And now that I've tried some ColourPop bits again that I picked up in the spring season, I've just rekindled my love for ColourPop. There were a couple of palettes there for a minute where I felt the quality just wasn't quite the same, but I feel with ColourPop, if you pick and choose and you get the things that really appeal to you, but because they release so much, it can be very difficult to wade through all of the excess and the noise that they create themselves. But yeah, just know that if you own a couple of ColourPop palettes and you're a little bit tired of them, that you can very easily rearrange them. If you use a magnet, you can pull them out and put them back together. I have videos up as well where I do the reorganization, so I'll make sure to link a couple of those down below. Also with the ABH palettes that I did reorganize, I filmed the entire process, so I'll make sure to link that down below. So yeah, would I buy Making Mauves now? No, because I have the Melt She's in Parties. I would prioritize that as like a mauve tone palette over any other mauve tone palette I have, I think. So that's why the Making Mauves by ColourPop sadly would not be a repurchase, but I'm still happy I own this. And this needs to go into a Shop My Stash. It just needs to be used sometime again. And then I have a couple of these little Juvia's Place palettes. These are the 6 pans that they did. I'm not sure if you can still get these. This is the violets, and this is really, really pretty. It's a little bit like similar to what the Very Perry has to offer, but a little bit more purpley. It has some really stunning shades, but I don't think these 6 pans had the same quality as some of my other older Juvia's Place palettes. They just didn't quite deliver, I felt. So especially the mattes in this aren't as lovely as I know Juvia's Place can do them. And also the shimmers are not as rich and creamy as Juvia's Place did before this. Still a really lovely color story. I like this a lot, but again, I just think I have colors like this in palettes that I've purchased later that I would prioritize over this. I'm thinking of my BH Cosmetics Passion in Paris, like instantly. I have my Huda Beauty Rose Quartz, which I think I bought after I bought this one. So this has become perhaps a little bit superfluous in my makeup collection overall, but I still have it because I like it as far as a palette goes. It's got some really good shades. It's really nice and travel friendly. It wasn't that expensive because I think I got a lot of these actually on sale for like $7 at the time. So it didn't quite break the bank either. And I remembered that I kept this over my larger Masquerade and Magic palettes because these shades were very similar to some of the things that I got in the Magic and the Masquerade. And I de-potted some of my favorite shades from those 2 Juvia's Place palettes into a ColourPop palette, which again, I filmed for you, so that will be in one of the links down below, and I actually decided to keep this over those larger things. So it made sense in the grander scheme of things, but I don't think I would repurchase it. Is this palette a regret? Perhaps, but my Tarte High Tides and Good Vibes, I forgot to name when I filmed my eyeshadow palette collection because this is one of those palettes that sits in my makeup collection and that I don't get rid of because I know I love the formula, especially because it has pressed glitters and I don't love pressed glitters, but these were pressed glitters that actually impressed me. Like these are good pressed glitters. Like if you want an example of what a pressed glitter should be able to do, Tarte High Tides and Good Vibes. It's got warm tone neutrals here and then these like blues and like a slightly like peachy pink. Really, really stunning. It's got like a really great teal. I love this when I used it. It's really stunning quality, really stunning formula, really stunning packaging, and yet I don't think I've used this and wanted to use this beyond the initial review. Not because it's not a good palette, but I don't really want to ruin this because it's just so pretty. And I definitely got sucked into this because of that little turtle guy and like the moving water. Like, that's definitely part of the appeal here. Let's not get into it. But it's a warm toned color story with a blue. Is this now my only warm toned color story with a pop of blue? No, it's not. I have some things that have teals in. Like the new Cape Town palette from Essence. It's kind of these kind of shades. It doesn't have the pop of bright blue though, but it does have the teal. I have the the Game Beauty Victory palette that has a similar thing. So again, I just think that the time, like when this was released, it was like warm tones with a pop of blue were everything. And it is a very classic combo to make. But it's not something that I necessarily needed in my life. So again, I don't think I would repurchase it because I just prefer it a little bit more if it's just teals and not that brighter pop of blue. Yeah, so this is definitely one that's also like, if the next time I declutter, I think I'm going to put this in a makeup memory box because I never think of this. I never think of using this. I never want to go back to this. It's just not a priority in my makeup collection. So was this a waste of money? Perhaps. A little bit, and I definitely would not repurchase if this came out today. I think I would be a little bit less sensitive to what this looks like because it looks really stunning, and I was definitely sucked in with what this looked like more so than what it actually does for me. But if this palette were still available, I'm very sad to show you this because this has been discontinued, but I'm not a huge collector of influencer collabs with brands. So I don't have that many, but the Club Nebula, this is the Kaleidos collab that they did together with Angelica Nukvist. And this is, I think, the best collab palette that was ever made. It's got stunning packaging, interesting color story. Why do this is not done on purpose, you guys, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, could that be why? Hold on, if I can do this, because I only have two hands and I don't want to break any shadows. I swear I don't do this on purpose, but I was looking at these shades, I was like, this is like Carly Bible and some of these cool tones as well. It just has some brighter pops. So this is like the Carly Bible on steroids, you could say. So this palette is absolutely gorgeous. It has all the shades. It's got some brighter pops of color. You get some like sparkly, toppery things. It is absolutely beautiful. It just is. And it's just one of the best palettes ever. So yeah, if this were still available, I would buy it in a heartbeat. And if I were to ever lose my makeup collection, I would miss this in my collection so much. So this is a definite yes, I would repurchase this. And finally, last but not least, the Meld Cosmetics Mary Jane. This is the way you need to see it. And I know this is not a palette that anybody loves apart from me, it seems. It is a cooler tone story. It's quite smoky. We get some like greeny, goldy, taupey things going into like these murky gray tones, but they're a little bit more taupe leaning because they have a lot of brown, then some actual cooler tone browns, and then we get this like more like champagne-y, sort of murky champagne sort of toppery shade. The two shades at the end are best topped over other things. They take a lot of building up if you want to use them by themselves all over your lid, for instance. So that's not really going to work. But overall, I think these eyeshadows are really stunning. I would repurchase this in a heartbeat. It's quite dark and sultry, yes, but it's the good kind of like dark and sultry. And I know a lot of people didn't like the shimmers in this, but I like that flaky shimmer because I tend to like pick them up with a brush, apply a little layer first, and then sort of tap it in with my finger. And then perhaps I would use my finger to intensify that shimmer just a little bit. So yes, this would be a definite repurchase for me. I would miss this in my makeup collection if it wasn't there, if I lost everything, and if this came out today, I would definitely be interested in a color story like this. So thank you so very much for joining me today. Those were all of the eyeshadow palettes that I wanted to mention. So please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Do you have any of these palettes? Are these palettes you're interested in? Maybe these are palettes you missed out on. Please let me know in a comment down below. For now, I would like to ask you to consider subscribing if you haven't yet. And then I hope to see you in another video very soon because I post several times a week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.